Greetings and welcome to another Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team video. Today I'm going over, or another Tactica, how to use rosters for Kill Team, where I'll be explaining how rosters work and how to use them for Kill Team. But before we get into things, please remember to like and subscribe as well as comment. Let me know what you thought of this video and if you found it useful. And remember, if you want, I've got a Discord you can check out in the episode description below for free, as well as a Patreon if you want to give me some more support. But let's get on with this video. So what is a roster? For Kill Team, your roster is effectively your army list. So if you're coming from something like Warhammer 40,000 or Age of Sigmar, it's effectively your army list for the game, listing all the operatives you can use in a game of Kill Team. It's capped at 20 operatives, so if you know Kill Team doesn't use any points, but you can't add more than 20 operatives, which is very situational, but we'll get to that in a bit. It's what you use to create kill teams at the start of each game, because remember, after you've seen your opponent and set up the table, then you decide what you're actually going to use for that game. You don't just go like, here's my kill team, I'm using all that. You use your roster of 20 operatives or up to 20 operatives and select your kill team from that and play against your opponent. So at face value, it seems quite basic, and effectively it is, but now I'll go into a little bit further. For the cons of the roster, it can generally feel pointless or limiting. In that way, a lot of kill teams don't really use the roster to its full maximum ability. And, you know, especially if you're playing pickup games and you only want to use what you get in your box, you go, oh, there's no point in using the roster. I've just got the operatives I have with me. And that's generally fine, but it's a complaint I see from people. The other thing is it's used instead of points for kill teams. Now, in the last edition, Kill Team 2018, effectively you had a roster, but it was still capped at points, where the roster you could add anything, but then you could still only build a kill team selected of points. This time, you need to use points. You don't need to use points, and some people are still quite upset about it to the point where they didn't transition from Kill Team 18 to Kill Team 21, but that's another downside of it. And it is a test of skill to an extent. You get more you put into it. So if you just look at the roster face value, you're going to think it's not too great, don't need to worry about it. And then you run into someone who is using it to its full ability, and you may go like, wow, this doesn't feel fair. But it's a tool everyone can use. It's just a lot of people don't like investing into it because they don't generally see the benefit of it. And it can also cause analysis paralysis at the select a kill team stage, especially if your roster is very large. I have encountered some players who will take a long time to select their kill team because they've either built a large roster just because they can and now don't know what to pick against their opponent. And they go, oh, I've got so many options. What do I pick? Well, you can go, I've just done. And then, as I've mentioned, some kill teams really don't like the 20 operative limit. Some kill teams find it very limiting and actually hurts what they want to play. This is mainly for kill teams that also have fixed loadouts and special rules. For example, like the Necron Hierotek Circle and the Warp Coven, where they have to take their psychic powers and mutations or cryptic powers on their leaders or sorcerers instead of when they set them up. So it's like they will have multiple of the same operative, but just with different spells, technological spells or abilities. For the pros of the roster, it allows you to tailor your kill team for every game and for each opponent and mission. It's effectively a side deck if you've come from like a card game background. It's very powerful, and a lot more of the modern kill teams are better at utilizing the roster for you to tailor against your opponent, and it really rewards you the more you put into it. So the more you know matchups and missions, you can tweak your kill team and makes the game very fluid, and it rewards a lot of, as I said, research and planning. It lets you build more than what is considered needed as essential. So this isn't like a technical boom, but you may go like, oh, this is the core for this warp and what I should kill team, what I should run. It should be these 10 operatives. I don't need to build anything else. I could, but I don't. Like when you come to an army, like when you come in from 40k, you go, I'm building 1500 points on the nose. That's my army. With Kill Team, you're allowed to effectively fill up your roster with stuff you may not always take, but stuff you go like you like the look of. So that's a neat thing. You can go, you know, I don't really think this operative is useful, but I wanted to paint them up because they look cool. I converted them and now I can use them in game if I want to. And it can be used for potential mind games when you have a roster with every option. Because especially like I have run into people where they go like, why have you got all these operatives? You only need like 8 or 10 of them. And it goes, well, it allows me at the roster selection, because you share your roster with your opponent before selecting kill teams. If you only have your set operatives, right, your opponent goes, okay, I know what they're taking, because that's all they can literally take. I can now customize towards that. Whereas if you see a roster with like 15 to 20 operatives, it makes them guess more, even if they know what the general consensus is the most efficient kill team selection. When you have such a huge choice to select from, it can confuse people. Like, for my examples, I have, like, when I was playing Corsairs, the Corsair Voids Guard, I'd put both the Heavy Wraith Cannon as well as the Shuriken Cannon on my roster, even though I probably wouldn't use the Shuriken Cannon. The Shuriken Cannon is just to go, ooh, I might. Whereas the Wraith Cannon, I actually would use on occasion, and it would confuse people because people would go, but you're going to select the Blaster or Shredder, right? It's like, I could, but I've got a Wraith Cannon. It's that kind of stuff. And it allows you to be less predictable, which is really important when you're playing competitively. And it may seem like a minor thing, and a lot of the time it can be, but the more you have the room to surprise your opponent and use it well, the better it is for you. So here are some kill teams that dislike the roster limit. So first up, we have High Fleet, the Tyranids. Now, this is actually very interesting because they're a compendium team, and they're the only compendium team on the list. And what they find really like limiting is because effectively you've got Gene Stealers you can take in fire teams of 5, Warriors you can take in fire teams of 3, and then Tyrannid Swarms you can take in fire teams of 8. So the general like universal loadout for Tyranids is when you go 10 Gene Stealers and then 6 Warriors. But that only leaves you 4 slots on your roster. So what some people like to do is only take 3 Warriors and then take 7 Tyrannid Swarm, because normally you can only have 8, but then you take 7 Hormagaunts and then 6 Hormagaunts and 1 Termagaunt with a Devourer, because the Devourer Termagaunt counts as 2 slots. So then you can have a full 20 roster. If they could have a roster with more than 20 operatives, then they could take literally 10 Gene Stealers, 6 to 9 Warriors, and then like more than 8 Tyrannid Swarm. So they would be able to take a crazy number of operatives. And this is why they find the roster limit super limiting. And it can be hard selecting the kill team, because there are times where you want to run 8 Tyrannid Swarm, but you physically can't because of the roster limit. So they actually become quite difficult to run competitively if you want all the options. Then you've got Hunter Clades, because if they didn't have the roster limit, you could run 5 of each assassin. And people may go, oh, that's a bit extreme. But it would allow you to fully tailor for every list. Like in my rosters, I had to cut down all my assassins by 1 because I had 5 of the Rustwalkers with double blades, and then I needed to get the Cord Claws. So to cut it down, I had to remove it to like 4/3 of each, which is not ideally what I wanted to do, but I had to do based on my roster limit. Because ideally, if there was no roster limit, I would take 20 assassins and then 6 to 8 Skitarii, which would give me too much power, especially considering the list of opponents we have. Then Legionary, obviously they're roster locked, so they are limited by what 2 marks they can take. A lot of people I see take pure Nurgle, Mark of Nurgle, which kind of makes sense, but I think people are getting too lazy by picking only Legionary, like Legionary Nurgle. And if they didn't have the 20 operative limit, they would literally have a kill team of like probably 40 operatives, 40 or even like 60 with every marked if they wanted to, like, even if they were running the same model as 4 different marks, technically 5 if you go undivided, they would have the biggest roster in the game, and it would be like their roster they would give you at the start of the game would be ridiculous. And then you have Void Dancer Troop. And the reason Void Dancer Troop dislike the roster limitation is because they basically have 4 to 5 different melee profiles, and you actually need to tailor them based on your opponent. And I think if you did remove the roster limit, as like some people ask, it would definitely make those 3 bespoke teams even better than they already are. So I think the limit is good, but this is just mentioning kill teams that don't like there being a roster limit, because it actually limits their options compared to the other kill teams who are either elite enough with not enough options in terms of they don't really need 20 operatives on their roster, or kill teams that just fit underneath it, so they're okay. Now here is an example roster that I use for my Void Dancer Troop. And I've mentioned it in a few videos, but I think I'll just explain it again here. So what I have is a lead player with a power weapon and shuriken pistol, a death jester, a shadow seer. Then I have 3 fusion pistols with a blade, caress, and kiss. And then I have 3 neuro disruptors with a blade, kiss, and caress. Then I have 3 players with a blade, 4 players with a kiss, 3 players with a caress, and 1 player with an embrace. So this is all what I take competitively to tournaments because it allows me to tailor for my opponents. So explaining this as an example, I think is very good, even though it's a kill team that is very limited by the roster limit. So for your leader, you can give them, different pistols, but I just go shuriken pistol and power weapon. Generally, you don't want to put a fusion or neuro on your leader. It makes them too much of a high target when they're already a high target already. But I will explain the difference between the weapons. So you have a blade, Harlequin's blade, which is balanced, so it gets a reroll, 4/5 damage, 5 attacks. You have the kiss, which is 3/7 damage, so 7 on a crit, 5 attacks. Then you have the caress, which is 4/5 damage with rending. So if you roll 1 or more crits, you can turn one of your normal hits into a crit. And then I've got an embrace, which has brutal. So the reason I have 1 embrace is because if I give it a free equipment point upgrade, it gets lethal 5 up and reap 1. And the reason I take that is when I run into Wormblade because of their locus, because he parries first and he has 9 wounds. So if I charge in and roll 2 5-ups and a 4-up, even when they parry first, I'll be able to kill them in 1 hit with a murderous entrance because it'll let me strike with a crit and a crit or a normal strike together. So I'll do 9 to 10 damage on the charge and be able to kill it with effectively 1 hit without taking any damage. So that's a very tech piece I take for that matchup. Then I've got caresses for when I run into Legionary Nurgle, because Legionary Nurgle reduce your base damage by 1 to a minimum of 2. So if I take a caress and theoretically if I roll a crit, then on 5 dice you have like a 59% chance effectively. If I roll a crit, it will turn one of my other hits into a crit. So if I get 2 crits and like 2 hits and the Nurgle I charge, if they don't roll any crits, I'm effectively killing them in 3 to 2 hits if I use Murderous Entrance, or they have to spend their crits to stay alive because my crits will be doing 5 damage while my normal hits will be doing 3. So 2 crits will do 10 damage and then a normal hit will do 3, adding up to 13, where their base damage is 12. Whereas if I attacked with the blade and I rolled a crit and 2 hits, I would do 5 damage from the crit and then 6 damage from my base attacks, meaning I would only do 11 damage, so they'd still be alive. And then the kisses, they're 3/7 damage. So if I on a crit, I'll do 7 damage. So they're very useful against 7 wound opponents. Like the reason I take 4 players with a kiss is for when I play into novitiates, because I'll drop the Death Jester because he basically won't get to shoot at them. So I can go leader, 2 gunners, Shadow Seer, and then 4 players with a kiss. And the kiss is very useful, especially stuff with like 10 wounds or even stuff that is -1 crit damage, because you can spend 3 equipment points to make it 4/7. So it'd go down to 4/6, a very useful weapon. And then blades just against general opponents. And that's why I've given the fusion pistols and neuro disruptors those weapons as well. So it allows me to maximize those weapon choices if needed. Now this is after games and tournaments of refining, but this is what I've been using for the last few months and I found really useful. And I just wanted to show the extent when you use a roster correctly, what you can do. Because if I didn't have a 20 operative limit, then I could add more. I could basically add 5 of each weapon type, and I could add a Shadow Seer with a Neuro Disrupt if I wanted instead of a Shuriken Pistol, and I could run my leader with both a Fusion and a Neuro on my roster if I wanted to. This is just an example showing you what a roster can do, how you can use it to tailor against your opponents, and what you can do basically when you put enough time and experience into getting the most out of your roster for Kill Team. So for the roster overview, if you're trying to explain it as a new player or you're a new player, remember it's basically your army list for Kill Team. It's what you use to construct kill teams at the start of the game based on your opponent and mission. It's a flexible tool that lets you side deck for every game and mission and opponent. For most modern kill teams, bespoke and going forward, it allows you to tailor based on your opponent if you have enough options, so you can build a very flexible and adaptive force, as Kill Team should be, meaning it's harder for your opponent to predict what you are going to do and allows you to play certain missions and matchups better than you would normally if you just use the same list all the time. Once again, it allows you to run operatives you only need for niche situations or matchups, so you can add stuff you don't normally need, but if you want to get the extra edge on your opponent, either based on what they're running or the mission you're playing, you can do that. And it rewards you for the more time you put into understanding it, because not only do you get the benefit of giving yourself a flexible tool that you can use to adapt to your opponent and mission, it allows you to recognize what your opponent's roster is as well. If you, as I said earlier, if your opponent has a very fixed roster of only like the minimum operatives they can run, you can now freely go, cool, I know what the ideal loadout for their kill team is, and I have the perfect counters for it, and I know now they can't tech and swap someone out to do that for themselves. So it may not seem like it's that important, but it's a really big skill check for Kill Team in my opinion. And I like how it rewards you for the more time you put into it. Because if you don't put too much time into your roster, you're not exactly going to miss out, and it's not a huge handicap. This isn't like a massive, one-up over you. It just rewards you for putting in more practice and going, okay, I've really thought about all these things I'm going to face and how I can tailor it so my bad matchups aren't horrible and how I can make my good matchups really strong for me. But that's pretty much it. It's something I've seen quite a lot, and I hope my explanation makes sense to you. I've tried to keep it nice and simple and not go too extreme. Personally, I'm a big fan of the roster. I really like how it's been implemented into Kill Team 21, and it's much more unique than it was in Kill Team 2018. But I'm really a big fan of it. I know some people are like, we should remove the roster limit, and I'm like, no, I don't think we should. I like that the roster does limit you, but also rewards you. It's a give and take kind of thing, and it's one of my favorite things about Kill Team because it's often overlooked, and it can be a huge test of skill and reward you, as I've been going over endlessly. But that's pretty much it for me today. This is another short Tactica, so I hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to like and subscribe as well as comment. Let me know what you thought of this video. Did you like it or hate it? Let me know. And remember, I've got a Discord you can check down in the episode description for free, as well as a Patreon if you want to give me some more support. So I'll quickly shout out my patrons. So for my Adepts of the Crit, I have Sam, Robin, Ninja Lee 83, Kenzie, John Thomas, Eric, Captain Murder, Daniel, Average Joe 27, Arthur, and Adzik. And then for my Veterans of the Crit, I have Samja. So thank you so much. Your support really helps, and helps support the channel, and it keeps help me bring this kind of content. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I want to do more stuff, but the thing is, I'm very limited on time for these next 2 weeks, as well as because I'm going to LVO, there's a lot of stuff I need to prep for. So you might see some more shorter form Tactica content like this. So let me know if you like it. I need time to record more battle reports, but that's pretty much it for today. I hope this makes sense. Once again, it's more the content I've wanted to put out for a while, just because I've had a lot of new players ask for help and this kind of stuff. And yeah, people overlook the roster way more than they should, in my opinion, and also overthink to an extent. So yeah, I hope this helped. But remember, no matter how big or long your roster is, at the end of the day, it still won't help you win unless you can roll a crit.